Hey friends, so recently I saw a pain point in my personal life and the lives of many others that I thought could be solved by, well, development. So, in my local subreddit, they started doing a weekly thread asking about what's happening. And in that thread, people would post calendars and links to calendars of events that were coming up from dozens of venues. And the threads have been really unorganized, and it's been kind of hard to follow and see comprehensively what's coming up in a nice, organized fashion. So, well, in true developer fashion, I thought I can automate this, and so I did with Selenium. So, let's walk through the process of scraping all of those calendars and generating some useful output. So, first and foremost, we need to start a new project in my source directory. I'm going to make a directory here called calendar scraper. We'll go ahead and run npm init -y to answer yes to everything. And then we're going to install TypeScript. And we're going to do tsc init to get it started as a TypeScript project. Cool. Ah, crap. Didn't mean to open up code in my entire source directory. There we go. Code in just this directory. Excellent. While that's loading, we're going to do npm install Selenium WebDriver and .env. Selenium WebDriver, and npm i-d. Our types, type/node, we'll need that for .env. .env has their own built-in types. We will need @types/selenium WebDriver as well. All right, they're loading up, so it's time for us to create some new directories. Config, well, actually, let me make a source directory. And in there, we'll make a config and a Selenium folder. No, not like that. All right, there we go. New file, we're going to set up a .env. We're going to set up a getignore to ignore the .env itself. Now, there's not going to be anything sensitive in this env. We're strictly using it to manage different environments. Since my local Firefox binary path is not going to be the same as like a deployed, instance. So we're truly using it just for managing environment variables and not like secure, variables. But still, you don't want to track that in source code, just not a good habit. So we've got that in our getignore, and this is currently not a Git repo, so VS Code is not graying that out, which feels a little disconcerting. Not like you should trust VS Code color coding as like a firm, like definitive answer as to whether or not something is safely ignored or not, but still, it does feel weird to not have that lighting up. So we'll do git init. You should always use git status to verify your files are tracking what should be tracked. All right, so I'm setting up two environment variables here. One is, node.env. I'm just putting it in this file. You can just do it via like a dev script or something, but since I'm already setting up, .env, I may as well just do that here. And I'm putting another one for Firefox bin so it knows what binary we're choosing to use. So if you're on a standard Linux installation of Firefox, it would be like user bin Firefox. If you're on like Mac OS, it would be like applications Firefox maybe, wherever your Firefox binary is stored. And on Windows, it would be something like C:/program files, whichever version, and then Firefox maybe, something to that sort. Now, I'm an idiot and I installed it through Snap, so my Firefox binary is not where it should be, which reports it, symlinked correctly, but if I say where, whoops, it's like, okay, well, it's actually installed, under Snap and it's symlinked to that, but this still is not the correct location. It is actually under snap Firefox current user bin. No. User lib Firefox. It's literally the worst thing. And then there's the binary itself. So that is my actual very weird path. So that's why I am making an environment variable for this instead of having it hard-coded as a string, because wherever I deploy it, it will actually just be a standard, path. But and here, development is the node env. I'm just going to have set up manually. But let's go ahead and get our configuration file taken care of. And I'm going to make default export here, have a Selenium object with a binaries property that, the reason why I'm doing this is, what if you're using this project that I'm doing as a framework for getting started for like testing one of your applications that you've developed? You might want to test it out in both Firefox and Chrome, or maybe some other browsers. So you might want to make sure that you have environment variables defined for all of those. Just to make sure I type that correctly. Yep. All right. And then creating an environment variable called isDevelopment. It's going to be a Boolean, just checking to see if node env strictly compares to development. We're going to use that for applying some Selenium settings, but we don't want to harp on just configuration stuff too much because it's not really important to the actual code at play. So in here, we're going to import Firefox from Selenium WebDriver /Firefox. We're going to import the builder from Selenium WebDriver, and we're also going to import our configuration directory. And in this file, I am not going to be instantiating and writing all of my Selenium code. What we're going to do here is strictly just have a function that builds and returns a Selenium driver. And the reason why we're doing that is because I want this to be as asynchronous as possible. So in my calendar scraping app, right now it's scraping from like 20 different sites, which is going to be pretty RAM intensive. And I was afraid of that at first, so I let everything be, semi-synchronous, and I scraped a website at a time. And it was fine. It was lightweight on resources, but it took like 90 seconds to scrape everything, and that was just a bit too long for me. So I did make everything fully async, and it does consume a lot of RAM while running, like 8 gigs. Which is not surprising if you have like 17 Firefox windows open up all at once, but it does accomplish it a lot more quickly. So those are all kind of considerations, but in order to make it fully async, it means I need to be able to construct and utilize separate drivers. So we're going to create a function here that lets us accomplish that. We're just going to call this function getDriver because, that's what it's doing. And let's see. Awaits new builder dot for browser Firefox dot build const options is equal to Firefox.options. That's a class, so new Firefox.options. And then its path, no, binary It's going to be the string of, well, our path here. So config dot selenium dot binaries dot firefox. All right. And not get Firefox options, set Firefox options to options. All right, so we're getting it built up and we will be returning that from here. Now, I do want to, in development, maybe have the Selenium WebDriver actually pop up so I can see and verify if it's actually navigating to the correct site. You might want that. So you can apply some development specific settings. So if config.environment.isDevelopment, options dot let's see, headless options dot set, set a key value. That might be dash dash headless. I can't remember. But yeah, so I actually need to move that down here, rearrange that. So yeah, if we're in development, it will set headless, to false. So yeah, in production, headless true, development, headless false, so we actually see it. But that creates our actual instance for us. So let's go create a calendars folder. And I'm only going to do a couple, so let's see. Oh golly, having to pick on camera of like my favorite Birmingham venues. Well, Saturn, definitely a clear favorite. We're going to go hit their calendar link up, and I'm going to cut that, and we're going to go create a saturn.ts file in our calendars. All right, and we're going to import get driver. I'm going to save our URL here, and then I'll have a function here called get Saturn calendar. And I don't know why VS Code is lagging. It's very weird that I've got such a delay. Very, very weird indeed. Anyway. All right. And just in the sake of brevity for this video, instead of like recreating what was like a multiple day long project, kind of just throwing error handling to the wayside. So I could do like a global error handler that just says like process.on unhandled exception and like my server or whatever, just like console log it, but all right. So we've got our driver. We're going to await our driver to navigate to that page, which we can do via driver.getURL. And we are going to pause the quit, so that means that the browser will remain open there. Let's go ahead and see if we've got everything linked up correctly. Let's see if we can get to that page. So I need my source folder to have like a server.ts. And for now, what we're going to do is just import get Saturn calendar and just manually run that from our server. And of course, in order for our server to run, let's see. we're going to install TS node. I don't have any like, you know, bundlers on this project yet, so we're just going to slap in TS node in our dependencies and have it evaluate everything live. So we'll have a dev script here that says TS node source / server.ts. And if this works, in about 6 seconds, we are going to see the website to Saturn popping up. And like I said earlier, a lot of the overhead of Selenium is, let's see, binary is not a Firefox executable. See, I did save this file, right? Let me copy this over actually from my previous project. Oh, I was at the directory and not the actual binary itself. Dumb. Okay. I was like, that same path was working for me on that previous project a few days ago. Why isn't it working here now? Well, it's because I gave it a directory and not like firefox.exe. But here we can see it has loaded the calendar, and we are in development, which means it is not applying the headless flag. It is explicitly setting that to false. In fact, if we wanted to, we could actually change this up to be a little cleaner. Headless is going to be set to whatever the value of not what is development. So if we're in production, not development is true. All right, but we do have it loading up, which is the big thing here. So next up is, well, scraping what's on there. And you can scrape stuff with Selenium in a whole lot of ways. Honestly, the lazy, quick and dirty way I do, especially with these calendars, is I just find their common attribute for like a calendar day, and then I strip out the inner text and I just do a bunch of string parsing to like split everything on new lines. So that's the approach I'm going to do. And like I said, you know, we can do it really tightly structured in a lot of different ways, but realistically, I'm trying to scrape like 20 something different websites. It just would have taken so much time to get everything when a simple like regular expression and string split works out just fine. So I'm trying to find what we have in common amongst all of these. And what we can do is just cut out certain classes that we think are ones in common. I can see here, you know, we've got this one like C tickets, calendar, event container that seems to be kind of wrapping around everything. Can do some DOM manipulation. I am in a Selenium window, right? So it won't let me, yeah, you have to like type out allow pasting in order to paste, but my usual strategy is do my DOM manipulation before I even write any code whatsoever in, you know, Selenium, just to ensure that I'm targeting the correct selectors. So I'm going to say get elements by class name, and that does return like an element node list. So I spread it out into an array. So with it being an array, I can get the typical array functions. You can see here as I highlight over these that, well, didn't select the first. That's weird. So I might actually have to go get a different, oh, it's the outlined class. Well, hold on. Let me try targeting a different one. So we're not targeting the correct ones. We are missing one. MDC card -- outlined. Now that looks like it grabbed a lot more. So there could be like extra stuff. Oh yeah, like several months down here. Also, you know, we are only scraping a few events at a time. Some venues like this do several months in advance. Some only do like their upcoming week, which is really nice. So you have to kind of make a judgment call of what and when you're going to scrape. And so let me get that as a whole, because that's grabbing a lot of stuff before. What about the combo of these two classes? No, why is it not grabbing that first one? All right, well, we'll back it up a little bit. It's got a special class of today. That's annoying. Well, we can account for that. I didn't actually experience that with a regular selector. So what we can do is we do like a query selector all. Or we could do both, but I mean, that's kind of expensive computationally because we're doing 2 loops of grabbing everything. We could grab the picture, since that picture one would be the same, and then we can iterate up to the parent and then go down. Oh, here we go. I was way too high up. MDC card. So yeah, this is my typical kind of like Selenium process, is just, or calendar body. I feel like that's one I actually used. Part of this is just kind of like brute forcing your way through finding what's the biggest commonality. Now I can't do calendar body because we see over here it's highlighting just the body. I lose out on the date, which we really don't want to do because that's not part of the inner text of that element. So we have to go back it up a bit. And did they actually change up their styling like in the last like 2 weeks? We can target the date number, which that will be a guaranteed method of finding those, because those will all be the same regardless of which date. And then we can go up to the parent element and then get its inner text. Okay, let's try an approach like that. So with Selenium, in order to find the elements, we're not really doing regular DOM selection. What we're doing is some of their special DOM selectors. So we'll do driver.findElement for singular, or find elements for what they call a web element list. And we have to specify the type of selector we're using. So I need to import their by selector and say how we're identifying it. So for us, we're going to do by class name, passing that in as a string. So we're going to get an array of elements back that are going to be this. And what we need to do is actually map over those and well, hold on. We could just target table data elements. Now that I think about it, let me see if these up here, because I'd also be scraping, yeah, these as well with our current selector. Table data would still scrape those, but it allows us to find and strip out all whose inner text is strictly just the number. So we're actually going to do this by CSS and use a CSS selector of just TD. And what we will do here is, after we do that, we are going to rename this to elements, and then we're going to call these calendar elements, and I'm just going to dump everything into, text. So like I said, we can do a bunch of very intricate DOM manipulation, which I love doing vanilla DOM manipulation. I'm not a huge fan of it through Selenium's, structure. It's pretty okay, but if we can scrape everything as a string and just use regular expressions and string parsing, it makes it just very quick and dirty and easy peasy. So that's what we'll do. So we're going to await promise.all. And everything with Selenium is a promise. So even like doing inner text, that's not a simple top level property. It is a method we have to invoke. We have to await element.getText. So instead of just synchronously like mapping over all of those, we're just going to do promise.all. And once all of them finish resolving, as fast as they do, we'll have our array of calendar element texts. So let's go ahead and do just that. Elements.map for each element. We'll call that calendar days. We'll return calendar days dot get text. So we're not awaiting that, because if we did, we'd be forcing some synchronicity here. We are instead awaiting the resolution of all of them. So now calendar elements is actually just going to be an array of strings. And what we can do after that actually is run one additional filter. So we'll await all of that to finish resolving, and then filter, return cal elements only where the calendar element length is greater than 2, because otherwise it's just the date. So that does a lot of filtering of bad data for us out already. So I'm okay with this approach. I don't really remember what I did previously. Definitely not this, but let's go see what that yields for us. Oh, wait. Selenium. I'm like, wait a sec. Why am I not seeing the log here? Selenium, server-side code down here. So what we see is an array of a lot. And that's, like I said, I'm only scraping a few at a time. This venue usually has like 5 to 7 events per week. So what I typically do, and what I was doing for these, if it's an infrequently posting venue, I'll leave all of them up, because if they only have like 3 events, if it's not like a music venue over the next month, I'll just show all of them. But here I'll just slice from 0 to index position 7, not including it. So we get 0 through 6. Makes it a lot more manageable. And we'll have just a much cleaner structure. Now, what we're going to do as well is all of these are really long strings, but they are separated by a new line character, which is what Node's breaking on. And since we did inner text and we had multi-tiered elements, we're retrieving them as like a multi-tiered string. And what I can do is just a string split on the new line character, which I did on virtually every single one of my calendar scrapers. So, they're not in HTML format anymore. They are now in a consistently laid out format where the first is going to be like date, event title, start time, end time, link to buy tickets. So now instead of all of these being one big string, they're going to be individual arrays. So we'll save this, load it up. And I know that variable names here aren't the greatest, but I'm just trying to show like a high level overview of what the process is to, build this scraper. So I'm also changing this to say staging just because I don't want to see Selenium popping up anymore. It's going to take way longer, but since we know like what we're scraping, that is. So we're getting an array of these strings back. Instead of doing just a pure split here now, what we can do is make a function here, and for every one of our elements, array destructure out these properties. So first number, date. Second one is the title of the event. Now, not all of these will have like a start and stop time, so they won't be of the same length. So if it has 5, it's a one single title with shows and doors, and then buy tickets. If it has 6, they might be like subtitled with like an opener. So we have to account for these weird edge cases. 4 means they don't have doors, they just go straight to the show. So we have to kind of think very carefully of these weird edge cases, but we know that the first 2 will always be the same. And then we can use that just to spread out everything with the rest operator into this variable called rest. So we always have date and title. Now for the rest of everything, if the length of rest is 2, we know it's showtime and then tickets. So we can do something like that. Let showtime, doors, tickets, opener. We'll just kind of initialize these variables, or sorry, we'll create these variables but not give an initial value. And so here is where we can do these comparisons. If rest.length is 2, rest at 0, we'll assign show time to that. And then tickets, we're not actually using that variable, so we can just kind of do away with that. Then if rest.length is equal to 3, we know that it's not going to match this. This is 4, which means we have kind of an opener. So let me find one where it's just 3. There's an opener there. Here we don't. So rest.length is 3 here. So show is 0. And then doors is 1. We're also not using tickets again. So that's fine. All right. So we've got that done. And now our final accounts to check is the 4. So in the event that we do have 4, it means we have an opener and show and doors. So got to shift all of our indices down a little bit. So our opener would be rest at index position 0. Showtime would be index position 1. And doors would be index position 2. And now that we've gotten all of that done, what are we going to return from our map? Well, I want to return a formatted string with everything here intact. So, I was doing a bunch of like JavaScript date, object construction for that. Here I'm just going to hard code the month, but I had to do a lot of date calculations, which was really annoying on calendars that did not have the month specifically listed out like this. So here in the map, we're going to return June. We will interpolate the date. In quotation marks, we'll have the title, the premiere band that is. If there's an opener, let's do some conditionals here. if there's an opener, we'll have a substring here. That interpolates them. Otherwise, we'll go ahead and put the showtime here, since we always have a showtime. And if we have doors, we also need to evaluate and interpolate that. So if doors is truthy, we'll put a comma here after showtime, and then I think the text actually says doors, yeah. So I can just put a comma and then the word doors. Or not the word doors, the variable doors. Otherwise, we'll do an empty string. And that quick and dirty compilation of everything into a string that I return from here is pretty much the general process. So mostly everything followed this structure: get the driver, navigate there, find the elements, map over all the elements to get text, do some string splitting after, some filtering, and then, chop it up, extract everything out. So everything kind of follows this. It's pretty formulaic. After a while, you get into the zone and the development goes pretty quickly, but put the driver here, and then this returns that array here in our server. Async function load calendars. I'd do something like this to get all the array of data. So I'd say like const Saturn is equal to get Saturn calendar, and I would load everything up and do like an await promise.all for all of those. Yet again, to keep everything as async as possible. Yeah, it's going to consume a ton of RAM. Whoops, promise.all. So yeah, doing this, if I'm doing a bunch of scrapers, is going to consume a lot of RAM, but it's also going to complete so much more quickly than like the 90 seconds it was taking to open up, which, like, granted, like, that's still not too bad for opening up 17 to like 20, however many browsers, opening up, going to the calendar, scraping all that data, dumping it out, doing the, manipulation into an array of strings, and then closing it out, going to the next website, so on and so forth. Really not all that bad. But yeah, I would save the results, and once I had everything, I could then do some additional string manipulation to convert it into Markdown. So I would do something like this. What's happening this week? Then I had like a music and like a sports section. And then I had like a subsection for each venue, so Saturn. And what I would do here is add like an accessory function that would help me do all the string formatting. But since I do have everything as kind of a flattened string, it makes it super easy here. Just say Saturn.map for every event. Return every event. So I could do something like this. Or now, on second thought, it's an array that we're putting into a string, so we can just do a join. And I'm putting a couple new lines just between each entry, so. And you know what? We could even import like fs here. And yeah, I'm going to use the write file sync method here. Like I said, we're not I'm not doing like the, neatest practices just to kind of show this example, but I'm going to create like a calendar MD file that we dump this markdown into. So, it's only kind of a very small subset of what the code entails, but it's pretty nifty at what we can do with code, because now I don't ever really need to check the site manually. I just need to, oh, the headless option was never applying. Let me see. Options. Okay, I pretty much had the same process here. Oh, except I generated like one options, object that I just reused versus recreating this each one I create. That really wouldn't create too much overhead, but if I can save myself from having this code repeat over and over, if I can get it to just run once, why not? Add arguments, headless. Dash headless. Okay. So we'll just negate that case here. So if not is development, go ahead and run headlessly. So now we should see it headlessly. The big thing though is that we did get it to write out to this file, and now we've got a nicely formatted calendar. And we definitely would have multiple things, but I don't want to bore everybody to death. I just kind of wanted to show just a really high-level overview of what this scraper might be like. Now, with all of the stuff we are scraping, the post itself is getting really long, probably to the point where I'm about to exceed Reddit's maximum comment length. And so I think the next steps for that application are likely going to involve creating a website versus me just like running the script and like pasting the comment, and that way I can have everything fully expanded. But here we can see that just some rough string scraping does not come out too badly. You can do some custom formatting here, but regardless how it comes out, you've got something that you can easily copy paste to Reddit or in Discord, because Discord also takes the same markdown format. So it's fun. I really like working with Selenium. Like I said, their selectors, not always the biggest fan of those, but they work. What else can I ask for? So anyway, I hope y'all have enjoyed this video. I always love working with Selenium, and I'm kind of regretting the fact that I didn't do any videos of me actually doing this work previously, and it's just me kind of like recreating some of it in retrospect. But it's been a lot of fun, and I hope you get to have some fun with your own of Selenium. So anyways, I'll see y'all later.